Hey everybody, it's the Man Master here. I'm doing another video, and this one is a really interesting video because I'm just going to come out and say I was never a member of the Communist Party, but I was, kind of leading in that direction for a while. This is back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, where I had read a lot of Noam Chomsky, honestly, and I started just to hate America and stuff, and it was like after 9/11. I think it was before. Was it before or after 9/11? So I bought a couple books about Leninism and Marxism and stuff, and I was like, oh, it sounds like a pretty good idea. And I had problems with some of it, but I was like, well, what's wrong with getting the workers to all organize? Blah 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 blah. And on a certain level, at least if it's voluntary, I still don't have a problem with that. Voluntarism is pretty much what I would say is the ideal. But of course, dictatorship of the proletariat, that has a lot of different definitions amongst socialists and the left. But this was like a short period of time. I think it would I bought this book about Fidel Castro. I think I used to have it, and then I threw it away. I threw away some of these books. I used to throw away stuff. Like I was like, no, I can't have this. I feel like it's like this OCD thing that I have. Like if I have it, it's gonna be bad. Like some kind of bad voodoo on me or something. I used to have that. Long story. I'll probably talk about this more in future videos about my childhood, adolescence, where I used to throw stuff away, like all the Misfits albums. Oh, that was when I was a Christian. I'll do one about when I was a Christian too. There would be 3 different videos actually in this series. Now I'm coming up with more ideas as I talk. So I was kind of a communist. I really liked this book about Fidel Castro that I bought. I was like, and I'm just saying I would. It's a short period of time, maybe 2 months, 2 or 3 months, and I bought these books, and I was like, hey, I kind of like Fidel Castro. He seems such a fascinating guy. Oh, Che is cool too, and some of these guys in South America, and I still think that the South American Marxist movements had more legitimacy than some of the more Eastern Bloc Marxist Leninists and stuff. I say that because it's well, yeah, they're led by these people that are probably ostensibly middle class or upper middle class, but the peasants, getting these peasants that are fucking working for some colonial farm or some kind of company from the West that comes down there and exploits workers and stuff, they still have legitimate grievances. And maybe in the Eastern Bloc and Eastern Europe and stuff, there's more nuance there. In Russia, of course, where there's all sorts of stuff going on back during the Russian Revolution. I still believe. Let's look at the motivations of why people become Marxist-Leninists down in these countries and stuff. Why do they do that? How are they able to have that pull? Is my point, right? How are they able to get people to kill so many people in the name of this ideology? You have to still influence people to do this. There's a legitimate reason why they're drawn to that. Like with anything, I always look at these motivations of why. That's why with a lot of these current debates, I'm like, you're shaming and attacking people for believing a certain way. Why don't you look at why they believe that? I'm always about why. That's always been, I was, ever since I was a little kid, my father would take me out and tell me how a car works, why the pistons do what they do. It's always been part of my life that I want to question why. So yeah, back then though, I was kind of a communist, little, it's part of it was for shock value and just was fuck everything else. It's just like a rebel. It's like late teens, early 20s. I was just it was just a couple months where I would have said maybe I'm sort of a communist now, I would still consider myself on the left now. I'm just more of a left libertarian, sort of, if that makes any sense. A lot of people don't think it does, but that's fine. So I was, I read this book, and it was very laudatory towards Fidel Castro, and it was he kind of tried to explain all these things that he did and said. Now, the thing about Fidel Castro that really drew, I was really drawn to, is that he kind of lived closer at least from this book, which was propaganda, obviously, and a lot of this stuff that came out about Fidel, he lived a lot closer to like an actual person that got involved with the day-to-day operations of the socialist utopia that he was in. Well, so did Jim Jones, of course, but he'd go visit places, but it was closer. It was closer to like, okay, he would go to this farm and see if they're doing this. He was a micromanager in a lot of ways, just very intelligent dude, he's a very smart guy. Now, that said, obviously he's a tyrant, bully, terrible person in many ways. It, suppressed freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. That sounds kind of familiar to what's going on in the West right now. Just all these things. So I do not support him by any means, but I will look at the nuance. Even the CIA came out and said the literacy rate in Cuba is like higher than most of the Southern Hemisphere, whatever. Or they talk about the healthcare. The healthcare thing's a controversial thing. I know Bernie Sanders got attacked for praising, this clip that came out of him praising Fidel for the healthcare of Cubans. It probably is marginally somewhat better than the West. Probably is. Because they focus on it a little bit more. It doesn't mean just because you're praising little elements, Volkswagen, the Autobahn, Hitler, you're not a Nazi just because you say, oh, I love my Volkswagen, even though it wasn't Hitler himself getting involved in it, but it's just kind of under that regime that it got really, developed. Oh, low battery. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing to praise certain things about some systems and then saying overall the system is bad, but these little things about it are decent or good, right? And that's one of the logical fallacies and mind traps that people get into a lot of the time. So yeah, back then I was into Fidel Castro. I was also into some other things like Anton LaVey at a certain point. I'll get into that in my next video. But anyways.